The midnight train to nowhere. It began with a simple mistake, missing my usual train home and finding myself alone on the platform as the clock's hands crept toward midnight. I had been working late again, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets, mind numb from the fluorescent lights of my office building. The station was nearly empty, just me, the distant sound of a janitor's mop, and the occasional crackle of the ancient PA system. I checked the schedule board. No more trains tonight, but then, a soft rumble in the distance. The lights on the platform flickered once, twice. The electronic departure board glitched, numbers and letters scrambling before settling on a single entry. 0000 Platform 7. There was no Platform 7, not at this station. Yet when I looked down the length of the concourse past Platform 6 where I was standing, the shadows seemed to part, revealing a narrow walkway I'd never noticed before. The air felt different there, heavier, colder. The distant rumble grew louder. No one else seemed to notice. The janitor continued his methodical mopping, back turned to me. The security guard in his booth stared blankly at his phone. It was as if the walkway existed only for me. Against my better judgment, I took one step toward it, then another. Something was pulling me forward. Curiosity, desperation to get home, or something else entirely. The further I walked, the more the sounds of the station faded behind me, replaced by the increasing rumble and a high, thin whistle that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. And then I saw it, Platform 7 and the train waiting there. It shouldn't have been possible, but there it was. The train looked wrong, not modern like the others that run on this line. It was older, made of dark metal with windows that reflected nothing despite the station lights. The carriages seemed to absorb the surrounding illumination rather than reflect it. No destination was displayed on its side. No conductor stood by its doors. Yet those doors were open, inviting me in. I hesitated at the threshold. The interior lights were dim, yellowish. The seats were empty, upholstered in faded red velvet that belonged to another century. There was a smell, not unpleasant but strange, like ozone and old books and something metallic. Last call, a voice announced from the PA system, though it didn't sound like it was coming through speakers. It sounded like it was whispering directly into my ear. All aboard. I stepped inside, and the doors slid shut behind me with a hiss that sounded too much like a sigh of satisfaction. The train began to move immediately, with no gradual acceleration. One moment stationary, the next hurling into darkness. The lights of the station disappeared with unnatural speed, replaced by the perfect black of a tunnel that seemed to go on forever. I tried to use my phone to check the time, to call someone, to make sense of where I might be going. No signal. The screen showed 12 o'clock, but the digits didn't change. When I looked up, I noticed I was no longer alone. A figure sat at the far end of the carriage. I couldn't make out details in the dim light, just the silhouette of someone slumped against the window. I called out, but there was no response. The rational part of my mind suggested it was another passenger, perhaps asleep, but something about the stillness of the figure sent a chill through me. I decided to move to another carriage. The connecting doors were heavy, unlike any train doors I'd encountered before. They opened with reluctance, as if the train didn't want me moving through its body. The next carriage was identical to the first, except for one detail. The seats were arranged to face each other like in old-fashioned compartments, and each seat was occupied. Men and women in outdated clothes, all staring blankly ahead. None acknowledged my presence. Their faces were eerily similar, not identical, but sharing something fundamental that I couldn't quite identify. "Tickets, please." The voice came from behind me, causing me to spin around. There was a conductor there now, though I hadn't heard anyone approach. His uniform was as anachronistic as the train itself, high-collared, severe, with tarnished silver buttons. His face was in shadow beneath his cap. I don't have a ticket," I stammered. "I didn't know where this train was going." The conductor tilted his head slightly. "Everyone knows where this train goes." His voice had an echo to it, as if he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "The question is whether you belong on it." He extended a gloved hand, palm up, waiting. "Check your pocket," the conductor said, his voice now barely above a whisper. My hand moved automatically to my jacket pocket, a pocket I was certain had been empty minutes ago. My fingers closed around something thin and rigid. I pulled out a ticket, yellowed with age, the destination obscured by what looked like a dark watermark. The conductor took it, punched it with a device that made no sound despite its mechanical appearance, and handed it back. "Enjoy the journey," he said, then turned and walked away, his movements too fluid, as if he was gliding rather than stepping. When I looked back at the seated passengers, they were all watching me now. Their eyes reflected the dim light like those of nocturnal animals. One woman, hair styled in a way that might have been fashionable 50 years ago, smiled. Her teeth were too numerous, too sharp. I moved quickly to the next carriage, then the next. Each one was different yet equally wrong. One filled with luggage but no passengers. Another with seats facing backward toward where I'd come from. A third where the windows showed not darkness but impossible landscapes, cities that couldn't exist, mountains that moved, oceans suspended above forests. The train accelerated. The rhythm of wheels on tracks sped up until it sounded like a frantic heartbeat. My own heart matched its pace. In the fourth carriage, I found a map on the wall. It showed the route of the midnight train, a twisting line that cut through territories labeled with names I'd never heard, names that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. And along this route, dozens of stops were marked, each with a small symbol beside it, a crescent moon, a skeletal key, a weeping eye. There was one symbol that appeared most frequently, a simple circle bisected by a vertical line. According to the legend at the bottom of the map, this indicated passenger exchange. As I studied this, the train began to slow. A voice announced, "Next stop, Thornfield Crossing, passenger exchange." The windows, which had been showing impossible vistas, now revealed what appeared to be a station platform. But it was like no station I'd ever seen. The platform was empty except for a group of figures standing in a perfect line, equidistant from each other. They were motionless, faces upturned toward the train, waiting. The train stopped. The doors opened. None of the seated passengers moved. Then, as if responding to some unheard signal, one man in my carriage stood. He was wearing a business suit that might have been stylish in the 1980s. Without acknowledging me, he walked stiffly to the door and stepped out onto the platform. One of the waiting figures boarded in his place. This new passenger was wearing contemporary clothes, so normal-looking it was jarring after the anachronistic appearances of the others. He took exactly the same seat the previous man had vacated. As the doors closed and the train resumed its journey, I caught the eye of this new passenger. Unlike the others, he looked directly at me. His expression was one of dawning horror. "You don't have a reservation, do you?" he whispered. "You're not supposed to be here. Where is here?" I demanded, my fear giving way to desperate frustration. "Where is this train going?" He laughed, but it was a sound devoid of humor. "It doesn't go anywhere, that's the point. The midnight train never reaches a final destination. It just continues making exchanges, collecting fares." "What kind of fares?" The man looked around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. "Time," he said finally. "Memories, possibilities, all the moments that should have been yours given to power this thing. I've been riding for what feels like years, but I know it's only been." He was interrupted by the return of the conductor, who stood at the end of the carriage watching. The new passenger fell silent immediately, turning to stare out the window like all the others. The conductor approached me again. "Coming up on your stop," he said, though I'd given no indication of where I was going. "I didn't choose a destination," I said. "No one does," the conductor replied. "The train knows where you belong." The train began to slow again, and through the windows I saw another platform materializing out of the darkness. This one was familiar. It was my station, the same one where I'd boarded, or at least an uncanny replica of it. "This is your exchange," the conductor said. "Someone is waiting to take your place." Through the windows, I could see a solitary figure on the platform. As the train stopped and the doors opened, cold night air rushed in, bringing with it the familiar sounds of my local station. For one hopeful moment, I thought I might have imagined everything. that this had all been some strange daydream. Then I saw the waiting figure clearly. It was me, or something wearing my appearance like an ill-fitting suit. It stared at me with eyes that didn't blink, a perfect mimicry of my face stretched into an expression I'd never made. "No," I said, stepping back from the door. "I'm not getting off here." "Then you've chosen to continue the journey," the conductor said. His voice now sounded like many voices speaking in unison. "In which case, we'll need to collect a different kind of fare." The doors closed. My doppelganger on the platform didn't move, just watched as the train began to pull away. Its eyes remained fixed on mine until darkness swallowed the platform once more. The conductor was still standing before me, but he'd changed. The shadow beneath his cap had deepened until there was nothing but darkness where his face should have been. "We all make choices," the voices said from that void. "Yours is to stay on the midnight train. Now you'll pay the fare like everyone else." He gestured around the carriage. For the first time, I really looked at my fellow passengers. The new one who spoke to me, the woman with too many teeth, the others, all different yet sharing that same indefinable quality. And now I recognized it. They all looked partially erased, as if pieces of them had been rubbed out, leaving blank spaces in the shape of a person. Some were missing more than others, an absent hand here, a featureless face there, but all were incomplete, being slowly consumed by the journey. "Time is the fare," the conductor said, "and the train has all the time in the world." My hand tingled. Looking down, I saw my fingers becoming transparent, fading at the edges like a photograph left too long in sunlight. The process was painless but terrifying, watching pieces of myself simply cease to exist. The train picked up speed, hurtling through the darkness toward the next exchange. Outside the windows, impossible landscapes blurred past once more. Cities that never were, mountains that breathed, oceans of something that wasn't water. My ticket, still clutched in my remaining solid hand, had changed. Where the destination was once obscured, there was now a single word written in shifting script that seemed to move even as I read it. Continued. And I understood now. This was a journey without end. The midnight train to nowhere continued its route through places that shouldn't exist, collecting passengers who would never reach their destinations, extracting its fare in increments of existence. Somewhere in the city I'd left behind, someone who looked exactly like me would go to my home, live my life, take my place. And no one would notice the substitution. Meanwhile, I'd remain here, gradually fading with each exchange, becoming like the others, a partial person occupying a seat on an impossible train. Until one day, after enough of me had been consumed, I'd stand at the conductor's unspoken command and step onto a platform to be exchanged for someone new. Another mistake, another fare. The next time you find yourself alone on a platform as midnight approaches, pay attention to that feeling of being watched. Listen for the phantom rumble of wheels on tracks that shouldn't be there. And above all, check the departure board carefully. Because the midnight train is always running, always collecting passengers, always extracting its fare, and it might be coming for you next.